The people telling you the banks are lying to you are actually the ones lying to you. Now, if you've ever watched any videos on becoming debt free, you've probably heard of the terms velocity banking, mortgage acceleration, sweep strategies, debt acceleration, and many different names. But they all have something very similar in common, and that is they're telling people how to become debt free by using lines of credit over loans. And they're all wrong. Now, I know that is a bold statement to say, but I'm going to prove it to you in this training today. And I'm going to show you exactly why. I'm going to break down the math and, more importantly, the logic so that you can understand exactly what they're saying and where they're misleading you. So we're going to be covering mortgages, amortized interest versus simple interest, the total cost of interest, chunking, cash flow, understanding opportunity costs. Do you even want to become debt free versus using debt to build wealth? And most importantly, why all the people think that it actually works. And to anyone that thinks I'm wrong, I want to invite you to take this spreadsheet and prove me wrong. Now, I've provided an unlocked version and a locked version of this spreadsheet and my free training in my free school community. If you still don't believe me, I'd be happy to get on a Zoom and have a fun conversation on this, because it is in conversation that we discover something new, and that includes me, which is why I love putting this information out. It actually helps me understand it more, and it challenges me. So if you have any questions on this, put them in the comments below, and I will make sure to address them in my trainings. Let's make this fun. The first person to prove me wrong on this, and that is amortized interest costs the same as simple interest under the same circumstances. And this means using the same amount of principal over the same time period. If you can prove that, I'll give you $500. And more importantly, bragging rights, because that is the fundamental principle that all of this argument hangs on. So if you can't prove that wrong, it means all of the stuff I'm saying is right. But let's have a friendly agreement. If you can't prove to me your argument with math and finance, please take the time to go download my spreadsheet and test it for yourself before you also put wrong information out there. But don't worry, I don't have any courses to sell you. You get 100% free access to all of my masterclasses and these spreadsheets at learnandgrowrich.net. You're going to have full access to me and my team there to ask any questions you want, because I want you to be educated so that you can be successful. Now, in return, I ask that you subscribe and help me promote my information so other people can get educated as well. And that means I'm asking you to share this. I put a lot of time and details into all of this, which you will see, and I'm asking you to share it. Of course, only if you like it. Now, quick background on me. I have a degree in finance. I'm a published author in the finance industry. I've bought and sold my own businesses. I personally invest in real estate. I own multiple companies, and I own a financial services firm. And I'm an expert at financial modeling. And this financial modeling skill set allows me to show you exactly where they're misleading you, because finance is the math of money. And you can't lie about it once you know and understand the math. And that is exactly what I'm going to show you today. So let's hop in. So first off, let's address the first topic called the mortgage. All of these people are saying a mortgage is bad. They tell you it's a death pledge and that you're getting taken advantage of by the bank. They tell you that you're paying more than twice the amount of your house in interest. They tell you that a loan is bad and that a line is good. They're coaching you to become debt free. But at the same time, you listen to people like Robert Kiyosaki, who tells you debt is great. And then you learn about investing in real estate using none of your own money and creative financing, which is typically 100% debt. So on one side of this conversation, you have people telling you to build wealth using debt. And on the other side, you have people telling you to become debt free. And it totally contradicts each other. And that is because there is no right answer. Remember, finance is the language of money, and there are many, many words in that vocabulary. And just like the English language, there is a lot to be said and learned. So let's jump in. Let's start off by taking a closer look at this complicated thing called a mortgage and break it down so you can understand. So we're going to jump over to my iPad. This is the entire premise that the argument is based on. And that premise is that a mortgage interest rate costs more than a simple interest line of credit. And so first off, we have to understand the math of a mortgage. And as you can see here, we have a couple different variables. In the average line of credit, in the average mortgage, there's a lot of creative tools out there. And so I'm talking about averages. So the average mortgage has a structured payment for 30 years. The average line of credit is interest only. And so if we hold that premise inside of this, it's really going to help us see what differentiates these two. And the only differentiation between these two is the structured forced principal payment of a mortgage. What do I mean by that? I have mathematical financial models. We're going to jump into that, but I want you to understand the theory behind the math. Because if we just jump right into the math, you're going to get lost. And so first off, we have to understand this is the formula to calculate mortgage payment. And so before we get into that, I want to ask you, in this simple mathematical equation, A plus 4 equals 6. What does A equal? If you know math, what you do is you subtract 4 here, you subtract 4 there. A equals 2. Simple algebra, right? And so in this formula up here, if we are given the principal loan amount of $100K, we're given the monthly interest rate of 6%, and then we're given the number of payments of 360. So 360 months. The item that we're solving for is M, the mortgage payment. And so what we're asking is what would be a constant fixed mortgage payment that if we made it on a $100,000 loan at 6% for 360 months, what would pay that off in exactly 360 months? We're solving for A. So it's, if I showed you this example, A plus 4 plus 6 plus 10 equals 30. Now it has more variables, but there's only one unknown. So you subtract 10 here, you subtract 10 there, you subtract 6, you subtract 6, you subtract 4, you subtract 4, right? And so A, in this example, A equals 10, right? You are given 3 out of the 4 variables. Same thing with the mortgage payment. You're given 3 out of the 4 variables, and so you can solve for that 4th variable. In this instance, we have the mortgage payment that we're solving for. And so all of this complicated formula right here is telling you what is the payment that if I make 360 payments of this, we'll pay this thing off in 30 years. That's it. All of this front-end amortized interest concept is not correct. Amortized interest does not exist. Amortization is a philosophy or a term that describes spreading over time. And so when people say amortized interest costs more than simple interest, they don't understand interest. Because as I'm going to show you, it's the same thing. Interest is interest is interest. So if you understand this, you'll get that. And all we're doing is solving. And so as we look at this, and we're going to jump into the spreadsheet here next, as the monthly payment goes up, you pay it off sooner, holding the other 3 constant. As the monthly payment goes down, it takes longer. As the principal goes up, right? As if you go from 100,000 to 200,000, hold everything else constant, your mortgage payment is going to go up. If you decrease the principal, right, your mortgage payment goes up. As the interest rate goes down, so does your payment. As the number of payments go up, again, this is holding the other 3 variables constant. As the number of payment goes up, your mortgage payment goes down. As the number of payments go down, your mortgage payment goes up. And you're going to be able to see this in my financial model here. And so this is the base that their argument is based on, is that amortized interest costs more than simple interest. And so we're going to jump over to my spreadsheet, and I'm going to show you that that is not correct. And you're going to be able to see it firsthand. So let's go. So welcome to the Learn and Grow Rich financial software. It is also known as a financial model. It is a custom built Excel spreadsheet that I personally built. And this is where I gained a lot of my knowledge around finance. I used to do financial modeling for mergers and acquisitions of publicly traded companies, privately traded companies. I have valued everything from human capital to software to hybrid debt to workforce to bank loans to deposits to some really abstract, illiquid, non-marketable securities. And that's where I gained a lot of this financial modeling knowledge. And so what you're seeing here is something that I personally built to prove this concept that amortized interest is not more expensive than simple interest. In fact, amortized interest does not exist. And I'm going to keep saying that over and over and over again because it's misleading. Interest is interest is interest. The question is how many periods is it compounded, and a lot of those other really minor things. And what you're going to see is in this grand scheme of things, it has zero impact on the outcome. I'm going to show you a model soon after this training that actually shows you all of these scenarios. We have the baseline, a line of credit, chunking a mortgage, and a first position HELOC. I'm going to show you if the cost of capital is the same, which is a fancy word for interest rate. If the interest rate is the same on all of that debt and the same amount of principal, they all pay off at the same time, plus or minus less than $1,000, right? And over that time period, that's just a cash flow timing error that I wasn't able to program in. So I'm going to show you that. But first off, I have to prove to you this quote unquote thing that doesn't exist called amortized interest actually is the same as a simple interest line of credit when calculated at same rate on the same amount of principal. And so over here on the left is the chart that most people will show you, and they say, look at this chart. It is a mortgage payment chart. And they'll tell you, look at all the interest you're paying. These things called mortgages are front end loaded. Oh my gosh, the banks are taking advantage of you, when it couldn't be further from the truth. Because the other thing they don't show you is the line of credit schedule of the exact same thing. And if you see over here, the line of credit never goes down. So 100% of your payment is interest. And so if that is the case, wouldn't a line of credit be worse than a mortgage according to their philosophy? And what you guys are going to learn is everything depends. Everything depends on everything else. And so here's what we have to look at. We have $100,000 at 6%. The total payment is $600. Remember, we're solving for M in that complicated formula I just showed you. And so what the math says is if I make a payment of $600 every month over 360 months on a $100,000 loan at 6%, it will pay off to zero. That's all this is saying. And so then we come over here and we go, okay, $100 towards the principal, $500 towards interest. So now let's go to the line of credit schedule. Again, $100,000, but now this is what they call simple interest. There is no principal in the payment, so it will never get forced down over the years. You will always be paying the $500, and that graph showed it earlier. Now, if you look over here and you see, well, what is the interest cost? The interest cost on this line of credit is $500, which is the exact same as it is right here, the interest payment. And so what happens is because the mortgage is forcing you to pay this thing off over 30 years, it says every month we're going to add a little bit of principal, a little bit of principal, a little bit of principal, which means there's less beginning balance to calculate the 6% interest. And so what you're going to see is the interest is going to go down as well. Okay? It's not because it's amortized interest, it's math. the principal is getting paid off. And if you come over here, and again, you guys are going to have full access to all these spreadsheets at my Learn and Grow Rich school community. Just click the link below, get access, and I have trainings there as well for you guys. You can see the cost of interest is 6%. It will never cost you more than 6%. Never in this example. Now, there's some weird loans and lines out there. I'm not talking about those. I want to show you something very powerful. And so when we're analyzing these things, you always have to make sure you have the same payment on the same principal. And so right now, the line of credit only has a $500 payment on it. The loan has a $600 payment. So how do we fix that? Well, what we do is we go to our line of credit right here, and we make the extra payment equal to the principal payment over here. Right? And you guys can go do this yourselves. Copy it all the way down. And what you're going to see over here, right? So this is the summary. The blue up here is the summary of all of my mortgage. Total monthly payment, $215,000. Total interest, $15,838. Total principal, $3 short of $100,000. Okay, so we have to compare that. Here's the line, exact same numbers. Nothing changed. When you are able to make that, again, when you're solving for M, in this instance, the monthly payment, $600 on a $100,000 loan at 6% over 30 years will bring it down to zero in the 360th month. That is it. Simple interest calculation right here. But you guys are going to say, well, what about average daily balance? Don't worry. I take that on right here. You guys see, I have a whole training on this. So let's not jump ahead. I know what you guys are thinking because I've been there myself. I had to create these spreadsheets to prove it to myself that I knew what I was talking about. Because when you're talking to these people out there, they get you to believe that you don't know what you're talking about. And there was a point in time I was like, oh my gosh, this is a fascinating strategy. But as I became more and more educated on it, I was like, this doesn't make sense. And so I started looking into it. And I want to urge you guys to start looking into this. I'm going to share my spreadsheets. All of my masterclasses are 100% free at my free school community. You can get there by going to learnandgrowrich.net. And so check this out. Go play with it yourself and see understand the mechanics of money. And I just showed to you there's no difference between amortized interest and simple interest. Remember, amortized interest doesn't exist. Amortization schedules do exist, and that simply means to spread over time. And so we're going to be jumping into some more training. So let's hop back to my iPad so we can talk about this thing called chunking. See you there, my friends. Okay, so I just showed you that the same rate applied to the same amount of principal costs the same amount of money. Now, this is the entire premise that this argument of velocity banking, debt acceleration, whatever they want to call it, lies on. Because why else would you transfer a low cost of debt to a high cost of debt? Now, that's the reason they're saying chunking works, is that amortized interest costs more than simple interest. And remember, the first person to prove me wrong on this gets $500 in bragging rights. So go download the spreadsheets, try to prove me wrong, because maybe I missed something. Guess what? I am human, but I've been looking at this for a long time, and I'm a firm believer that what I'm sharing here is accurate information. But guess what? Check my work. If what they call, again, because remember, amortized interest does not exist. It's interest. Now, there's some as we get into the nitty gritty of this, there's different compounding periods, APRs, different things like that, but that is not what I'm talking about. In this example, what they're saying, we have the normal scenario here where you just typically pay your mortgage payment. So you have your mortgage payment, it comes every month and you pay it. And then if you want to pay it down faster, you just make an extra payment. And then you keep your line of credit as the backup. But there's going to be people that say, Zach, I chunk my mortgage. We train on theory, then we get into spreadsheets. So we're training on theory right now. Make sure you put all your questions below. I will create as many trainings as I can on this because I am committed that you have correct information. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I see people trying to get out of debt that are actually getting deeper in debt because it's misinformation. It's not accurate. They get deeper in debt, and it breaks my heart to see people want to change their lives, and then they get sold an expensive program or an expensive loan or line or whatever it is, and then they're going backwards. And so don't be that person. Get educated and get to our free school community. I'll help you guys whatever I can. And so over here, this is what they're saying is the strategy, chunking. And so the strategy here is you have your traditional mortgage, you have your traditional payment, and then you take a chunk out of your mortgage and you put it on a line of credit. Now there's a couple different lines out there. There's lots of different line tools. One of them is a HELOC. They're talking about credit cards. They're talking about all of these different lines. Now you got, let's say you have $100,000 over here and you chunk 10. This is an example we're going to be going over in my spreadsheet. Now you have 90 over here. And here's the other thing they don't calculate in their example. They say this actually increases cash flow. It does not, because you have a payment over here of 600, and guess what? You have the line of credit payment. And in this example, a lot of these people out there are using, they say, oh, if this $5,000 goes into this line, it does away with that $600. That is baloney, because the $600 is paid when you pay the $5,000, so only $4,400 goes towards the principal. The payment is still made. I'm going to show you that in my spreadsheet. And so it does not increase cash flow. It decreases cash flow because you're paying a mortgage and a line of credit now. And the other thing they're saying is, take this savings, no longer do that, bring it over here and apply it towards your line. Now, is that the best thing for you? I don't know, because the world of finance is very complicated and it depends on your opportunity cost. It depends on your cash reserves. It depends on your goals, all of these things. But for sake of conversation, we're not going to jump into that. That's a whole different video I'm going to be doing. And so this is what they're saying. They're saying put $5,000 in and that your $400 credit card payment goes away. It does not go away. It's actually paid when you pay the $5,000. And so this idea that it increases cash flow is not correct. And I'm going to show you the math on that one too. And so let's say you're paying $175 on this. I think that's what the initial payment is. And it depends on the interest rate. And so now instead of a $600 payment, you're paying a payment of $775. That decreases cash flow. When the better mathematical solution would be just make an extra payment of $175. So instead of paying $175 in interest over here, you're paying $175 in principal. Okay? And that is why chunking is absurd. If you're chunking a low interest piece of debt with a high interest piece of debt, it is costing you more. Because remember, I just proved to you the interest rate is the same. It's the same cost of capital applied against the same principal. So we're going to jump over to the spreadsheet, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean with these different scenarios. So let's go. So we're back at the same spreadsheet, but there's a little bit different scenario. And I'm going to upload this spreadsheet here that you're seeing right now, and it's going to be locked. And I'm going to give you one that's unlocked. So you're going to have what we call the control, the baseline, which is going to be the one you're looking at right now with the actual numbers it has in right now. And then I'm going to give you an unlocked version that you can go in and you can tweak it and you can add different payments and interest rates to see the mechanics of money. Because once you understand the mechanics of money, you're going to be empowered. You're going to understand, not just regurgitate something that somebody online is telling you in a course or a YouTube or something like that. So seek to understand. Get in our free school community, ask all the questions you want, comment below. I'll create all the trainings that you need on this. And so what are we looking at? Anytime you're doing an analysis, you have to have a baseline. And so when they're saying that their strategy will pay off a mortgage faster than it typically would, there's a couple things that you have to consider. Is First off, what is the traditional time period to pay off a mortgage? Well, we would say 30 years. Now, the reason they pay off a mortgage or a line of credit fast is that they actually pay more towards the mortgage. And if you look at their math, they're paying more money on the lines of credit than they are against the mortgage. And so in the example that I'm going to show you, we have to have a base, a control base. And so what we're doing is we're using $100,000 across every scenario. We're using a 6% cost of debt across all scenarios. And we're using a $2,000 monthly payment across all scenarios. And so if what they are saying is true, which we've already proved it's not, and if what I'm saying is true, which I've proved that the interest rate is the same, all of these scenarios should equal the same. And that's exactly what you're going to see today. They're all going to pay off the same period, the same amount of interest, and the same amount of principal, plus or minus about $1,000. And that's just because of some small cash flow timings. And so if we look here, we have $100,000, right? This is my baseline mortgage, no fancy chunking, no fancy lines of credit, just paying extra on the line of mortgage. You can see we have our $600 mortgage payment. Now, remember that $1,400 they told us to move from our savings account or our retirement account and put on our line of credit? Well, I'm going to put that straight towards the mortgage. And so my total payment in this scenario is $2,000. Now we have a second scenario. This is a mortgage with a $10,000 chunk. Okay, and so we have $100,000. Again, our payment is $600 on this mortgage. We chunked $10,000. So remember, we took the $10,000 and we moved it from a mortgage to a line of credit. And you can see my total payment here is $600 minus, that $10,000 because that's actually getting moved over here. And so this is that $10,000. We have to do that math. So I have $10,000 over here on a line of credit. I incurred $50 worth of interest. Again, this is at 6%. You can see this up here, 6%. Every cost of debt is at 6% because the cost of debt is not the magic factor here. The magic factor that they're talking about is actually paying more on your mortgage. And so I need to pay an extra $1,400 on this line of credit so that the total strategy now equals $2,000 worth of monthly payments. You can see, so I'm paying $1,400 a month on the line of credit. I'm paying $600 a month on the mortgage for a total of $2,000, right? Principal is the same, interest is the same, and payment is the same. Okay? And then I go to my line of credit. Again, 6%. Now, the difference between this is I am paying $2,000, right? I'm just paying $2,000, simple line of credit, and this is going to pay off just like the mortgage because there's no difference. There's no difference. I've already proved that. Remember, when we take the extra principal of the mortgage and we put it on the line at the same rate, it pays off at the exact same time. So that's what I did here, right? Let's make this thing. You'll see $2,000 all the way down till this thing's paid off. And then finally, now this one took some work, gang. This is for the people that says, but the average daily balance, Zach, you're not taking that into account. That's the reason this works. Well, I said, let's try it. Let's do the math. So what I did here is I took $100,000 and I calculated 6% daily interest. So we took our interest rate times our principal divided by 365. And then I added these expenses because what they say is use that line of credit like a checking account. And so what I did is I just put some random expenses here that equal $3,000, right? So they equal $3,000. Let's just make sure. Yep, $3,000. And then what we do is we have a $5,000 chunk. So we're paying $5,000 in, and we're increasing it by $300,000 for expenses. So that would mean there's a $2,000 payment. So they all have $2,000 payments on them. They all have $100,000 principal. They all have 6% interest. Remember the monthly payment calculation of a mortgage and the simple interest math. And so we have it right here. And what you're going to see across the board unanimously is they're all the same, right? They're all the same. So I have little summaries up here to show you on every sheet so you can sit in here and you can learn the mechanics of money. So the one that's edible to you, change all the things in orange. Try to show me how a higher percent interest on a simple interest line of credit is going to cost you more than doing it with a lower interest mortgage. Maybe I missed something, right? But I can't do it. And so here is the summary. And as you can see, the line of credit paid off exactly like the mortgage because it's the same logic. The mortgage, however, forces you to pay down principal. Now, the monthly chunking actually costs you a little bit more in interest. And the reason from that is because of cash flow timing. I'll show you right here. So when I chunk on these, so that there's this 10,407. So those little incremental, that 407 is going to have a little bit more cost of debt on there. But it was, we're close. And then the first position HELOC, you could just see the math. I calculate interest on a daily basis. Go in there, understand this stuff. The average daily balance is what this is calculated on. And this is the same amount. We're $470 off. And again, it's a small cash flow timing. If I was to get this thing absolutely perfect, there's just way too much programming inside of that to do this. But this shows you that they all pay off if we use the same principal, the same cost of interest, the same time period, the same payment. They all pay off at the same time. So how can simple interest cost you more? It doesn't. It is a misunderstanding and it has been misexplained by many people over a long period of time. So download these spreadsheets and go figure it out yourself and ask me if you have any questions. Now, I want to address one last thing because people are going to say, yeah, what about the cash flow? So I already alluded to this earlier. Cash flow actually goes down because now you have the additional interest payment. And so if you look at this, this is seen actually in the chunking one. And so you can see my total cost of debt here. Let's move it to, let's move this to a little bit higher rate. So let's go move it to 10. Okay. So the interest that is incurred is $83. The interest that I saved was $50. So on the line at 6%, it's costing me $50 for that 10 grand that month. On the line of credit, it's costing me $83 because it's at 10%, not 6%. So it actually costs me $33 more to make that move. It costs more, okay? Which decreases your cash flow. And even if it costs the same, let's say it costs the same at 60, right? I'm sorry, let's say it costs the same at 6%. My cash flow went down by 50 because now instead of a $600 payment, I have a $600 payment on this mortgage and I have a $50 payment on the credit card or line of credit, whatever it is. Even at the same rate. Because when you make a payment, the payment doesn't go away like they show in the example. It gets actually satisfied by the payment. So this is very important to understand. And so the last thing I want to talk about is, do you even want to become debt-free? So let's hop back over to my camera. So this last piece is really going to bring it all together. And I've never heard really anybody talk about this. And I want to bring it to the forefront because it's the basis of building wealth. Now, this is what I want you to understand. You have all of these people showing you how to become debt-free by paying off your mortgage using mortgage acceleration strategies like velocity banking. But at the same time, you have all of these real estate investors, millionaires and billionaires like Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone telling you to use debt. You have billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos who don't get paid anything and they take out loans against their stock portfolios, which is a loan, and that loan is supposed to be bad. Now, this is 100% contradicting, and it's the reason you're confused. And the other reason you are confused is because debt isn't bad if you understand it and know how and when to use it. And more importantly, how to limit your risk, because it makes zero financial or logical sense to pay off low interest debt with high interest debt. Now, let's get to the conversation. Why do all of these people think it works? Well, there's a couple different reasons. They use different time periods when comparing rates of return. And so for the line of credit, they're using 1 year. For the mortgage, they're using 30 years. And so they're taking all of that interest paid over 30 years and they're comparing it to what a month or a year of the simple interest line of credit would cost you. And as I showed earlier in my Excel spreadsheet and along with the graph, if you never pay the principal, the line of credit is going to cost you dramatically more. You'll never pay it off. And so you have to make sure you use the same time periods with the same interest and the same payment to really make sure the analysis is correct. That leads to the next one. They also use different amounts of principal for the line of credit and the loan. Now, typically the examples I've seen is they use $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 simple interest lines of credit versus a $100,000 to $200,000 mortgage. So at the same rate, 6% against 200,000 versus 10,000 at 20%, it's going to appear that the line of credit costs cheaper. But you have to have the same variables, the same amount of principal with the same amount of interest. And if you see that, go calculate the first month of interest on a $100,000 loan at 6%, and go calculate the first month of interest on a $100,000 line at 6%. Now, I've already done this for you in this training, but go do it yourself. Go download these spreadsheets and learn the mechanics of money, and you're going to see that it costs exactly the same. And so the other big reason is they just make more principal payments. It is really that simple. And so if you add up the principal payments that they use under a line of credit, you're going to see that they pay it down faster. So if they're paying that down faster, well, we have to apply the same monthly payment towards the mortgage to see if it's actually the interest rate that is creating the variation. And as you've seen today, it's not. So understand the mechanics of money, download these, and to anyone that thinks I'm wrong, I invite you to prove me wrong with my spreadsheets. I'm giving you guys full access to everything. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to challenge you to think for yourself. I used to believe everything I saw out there, and I used to believe that velocity banking worked. And then I started digging into the numbers. It didn't make sense to me. And so I started questioning it. And as you can see, I have proven that it doesn't work like they say. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, because I want to have a conversation. I provided the unlocked version and the locked version in my free training, in my free school community. You can get it at learnandgrowrich.net. Because at the end of the day, I want you to be educated, to understand all of this stuff so you can learn and grow rich. And remember to like and subscribe so I can keep bringing you some great information here. I hope this made a difference in your life, and I'm going to keep pouring myself into this work because I love what I do, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you need anything, comment below, get to our free school community, and let's create a life that lights you up.